Welcome to the CQC video training series. This is a spot topic video on using fields within actions. In this video, we're going to look at how you make use of the value of fields within your actions. We've discussed fields and actions before. If you haven't watched any of those videos, you should do that now. Otherwise, this might not make a whole lot of sense to you. But we know that we can write to fields in order to make the driver do something, and we can read from those fields in order to get the current status of the driver. What we're going to look at here is how we do that reading of fields. So I've just created a global action here. If you haven't looked at any of the videos related to global actions, they're just reusable actions that you can call from various places in order to be able to reuse logic. So I'm just going to double click that, and it's just basically an action with a title. So I'm just going to click the edit button here, and that just gets us the standard CQC action editor that you would have seen various times before in these videos. And the first scenario we'll do here is just to compare the value of a field and do something if it's equal to a particular value. And we would do that by using the if button, because we want to do something if something is true. So if and system and equals. And this is a very common command. And what it allows us to do is just to provide two values, which it will compare, case sensitive or insensitive. And if the two values are equal, it will do the commands within the if statement. So the first of these two values we're going to get from a field. So this is not specifically a field parameter, so we can't use the helper button here to select it. But you can always just right click in the parameter and select insert field. And that just lets us select a field to insert. And I'm going to do security, and we'll just react to the status of a security zone. Let's say kitchen door here. And what we want to do is select by value, and we'll see why in a minute here. So if I just were to do select without the by value, what we'd get is the literal name of the field. So we would be comparing something to this literal name of the field, which is not what we want. So let me do that again. Insert field, and it automatically selected it for us since that's the current value. If we select by value this time, what it will do is put it within parentheses with a $sign at the beginning. And this is a standard way to reference the value of a field within a CQC action. So when this action is run, this field will be looked up, and this whole thing here will be replaced with the value of that field. So we could compare that to ready, or secure, I'm sorry, secure. So that would mean this particular zone is secure. So let's put in a command here so we can see it in action. So we will say just, I'm not sure what we could do here. Oh, we can just put a comment in and say it is secure. So let's save that. And now we can just test this using the test button here, which just lets us run the action and see the output. So if we do that, and it allows us to enter any parameters. This one doesn't need any, so just hit accept. And you can see here that it shows us the one command that it did here, which is does secure equal secure. It does, although the comment doesn't get shown here, so we would have had to put some other command in there in order to really see it. So let me close that and do something better. So let's say if the command, or if the kitchen door is secure, let's just put in we'll turn on a light. So in this case, this is specifically a field value, so we can just click the helper here. And in this case, you notice it doesn't give us a by value because this parameter wants the actual name of the field to write to. So we'll just turn on the kitchen table light, and we'll set the value to something like that. Actually, we should have selected the switch instead. So let me do that. Kitchen table switch, and then we can set the value to true. All right, so let's do that. So if we test that guy and accept, and you can see that it did the test and that was true. So it ran the second command, which was to turn on the light. So that is just the simplest way to make use of a field within an action. And in the subsequent section here, we will look at some more complex ways that you might do this. Now let's look at a slightly more complex scenario. In this one, let's say you needed to actually access the value of that field, 3, 4, 5 times within that same action. You could do exactly what we did in this one and just continue to call the what we call the dereferenced version, where we're getting the value out of the field name. But what that means is that every time we use this, it goes to the server and gets the value of the field. So if we were to do this 5 times within this single action here, it would be 5 calls to the server, when in most cases the value would never have changed. And in a lot of cases, we wouldn't want the value to change. We would be assuming that we were operating on some consistent value within this one action. So in that sort of scenario, what we want to do really is just read the value of the field into a local variable within this action that we can use. So let's just demonstrate that here. I'll delete this stuff. And the most simple scenario would just be to use a command, local variables. You won't be able to see this. This will bit off the screen, but I'm just doing set variable, which is just the simplest way to set a variable value. And the variable name, I'll just call, I'll use the helper tool here so that we can reuse it easily. LVAR, we'll call it current value. And I want to use this by name because we're actually going to set the value of this variable. And we could here just do what we did before, just select a field and do it by value. So we could do insert field, and we can just do the same one as we did before, kitchen door status, and we want to do it by value. So now what happens is that this is replaced when this action is run by the value of that field, and it's set into this particular variable here. All right, and then now we can use that in multiple commands subsequently. So here now we might want to do an if system equals, oops, picked the wrong command there, sorry. If system equals, and now we've got the value in a variable, so we can just reference that variable. And here again, we can't use the helper button, but we can always just do insert variable, select the one that we added just a minute ago, and this time do by value, because we want to get the value in the variable here, not the name of it, but the value in it. And we could compare that to secure. And then in here, we could do the same as we did before and just write to a light. So we can do command, devices, field write, select our light field, which was the kitchen table switch, and set it to true. So now let's save that, and we can test it. Don't need any parameters. So here we can see that it set the value to secure, because secure is the value of that field. It got put into the current value variable. And then we see here it set the value of that, and it shows us the value that it set it to, which is secure. And then we do the is equals, and we get secure equals secure. And because they are equal, we do the actual light switch. Right? So similar to before, but in this case now we can reuse that same value in the local variable multiple times, and we won't have any extra overhead. Another way that you could do it, and it would get you to the same place, is to just, there's a command literally to read a value of a field, and you can just read it into a variable. So I'm going to delete this first command here, and we'll insert one of those. So we can do command, devices, and it's our field read. And so we can just select our field, which again was the security, kitchen door status. And in this case, we want the actual field because we're reading the field, so we need to give it the name of the field we're reading. And we can give it our target variable. In this case, it knows it's a variable, and we want to do it by name because we're setting the value of the variable. So we're telling it, read this field and put the value of it into this variable. So this should essentially get us the same thing as the other one, just a different way to do it. So let's test that. And it basically does the same thing. So we read the field here. You can see that it sets the variable to secure, and then secure equals secure, and it runs the lighting command. Now, why would you do this one over another one? One reason might be that you're not using a fixed field, but you're using some information that you're going to use to build up this field name. So for instance, this might be, you might get a parameter passed to this global action that tells you which status or which zone to look at. So in that case, we would get rid of this, and we could insert a parameter here. parameter 1, we'll say. And what will happen is the parameter that's passed into this value will get put into here, and that will create the actual field name we're going to read. You can't do that with the other scenario because you can't have nested tokens like that. So we couldn't do this. Sorry, I can't type because I can't see the screen, or I can't see my keyboard. So we can't do that. That would give us an error because it's a nested token. But we can do this because all we're doing is just building the actual field name. So let's save that. So now let's test this. And in this case, I will give it a parameter to pass in, and it'll be the kitchen door one. So if we do run and ask for parameters, these have to be quoted. So I'll do kitchen door. And now you can see that it basically did exactly the same thing. The field that we ended up with is zone kitchen door status because the parameter that was passed in got replaced in here to create this field, and the rest of it is the same. So there's a lot more flexibility in this sort of way when you use that read field or field read command rather than just using the replacement token to get the field value. So hopefully this was helpful. There are lots of scenarios where you need to use fields within an action, and for the most part, everything is going to come down to one of those scenarios there. Everything pretty much can be done using any of those. So try them out and make good use of them. We'll see you in the next video.